Our guest this morning, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn, has described the federal government's new position on vaping as somewhat of a Pyrrhic victory. Now, as a word of the week, it's actually two this week. A Pyrrhic victory is described as a victory that inflicts such a devastating toll on the victor that it is tantamount to defeat. Such a victory negates any true sense of achievement or damages long-term progress. And that's what is called a Pyrrhic victory. And you're going to find out why Dr. Mendelsohn describes the latest vaping legislation as a Pyrrhic victory for the federal government. Well, as we all know, the vaping legislation that's just passed the federal parliament has been a complete and utter pile-on from all sides, and it's a joke. It's a running joke, but I thought we'd find out another point of view about it, and it's one of our guests we had on before, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn, and he has been pretty scathing in the approach that the Australian government has taken, especially when you compare it to countries like New Zealand and England. So, having said that, we've got Colin on the phone at the moment. Good morning, Colin. How are you going?
Good morning. Good morning, Alan. Very well, thanks.
Now, Colin, this complete charade that's been happening the last couple of weeks, I don't think any of it's based on any real science. And the thing that triggered me, Colin, was my son who's had smoked. He went on to vaping, and he said to me the other day, "Dad, I don't know what's going on here. I think that the government now wants me to go back to smoking because they've made it so confusing and so hard to go and get a vape." Is that sort of what you were hearing, Colin?
Well, that's exactly right. We actually are getting a lot of reports of individuals going back from... We've got 1.7 million vapers in Australia, and we hear a lot of reports of people going back to smoking. Now, smoking is the most deadly thing you can do, and even a few people going back to smoking is a disaster. 2 out of 3 of them are going to die from their smoking if they keep smoking. That's something we should be trying to avoid at all costs, and what we should be trying to do is to reduce the barriers so that smokers can switch to vaping, because vaping is at least 95% safer. We know now that smoking is really deadly. One of the best thing you can do is to quit altogether, but a lot of people just can't. And so for them, switching over to vaping is a huge benefit for their health, and we should be getting rid of the barriers, not making it harder.
But that's completely opposite to what the health minister was outlining the other day. He was saying that the vaping encourages children especially to take up vaping, and vaping will kill you. That's basically what he said.
Yeah, I know. Look, some of the information the health minister is giving, honestly, is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, he must know it's wrong, or he's just being given misinformation. But we know for a fact now that if there are a small number of kids who are going from vaping to smoking who wouldn't have otherwise smoked, it's far outweighed by the much larger number of kids who are not taking up smoking because they vape. So vaping is a gateway overall out of smoking. So the first thing is vaping doesn't lead to smoking. That's the first thing. Secondly, no one has ever died from vaping. Vaping carries only a tiny fraction of the risk of smoking. And I think the exaggeration that the health minister is prone to is just does not reflect the facts, does not reflect the scientific evidence.
Yeah, but that's where he keeps coming in with his defence. Oh, this is all based on science and stuff like that. Well, how come the Australian science is completely different to the American science, the English science, the New Zealand science? I mean, where's it start and end? There's a narrative in there somewhere.
There is a narrative. I mean, we have a narrative in Australia that we just don't want people to vape, and we look at the evidence that supports what our preference is, and we ignore the evidence that says something else. Overseas, they take a more balanced view of the evidence, and the evidence is very clear that if you're a smoker, there is no question that if you switch to vaping, there are dramatic improvements to your health. You have improvements in your health conditions. Your asthma will improve, your COPD, your blood pressure. You will feel better. You will save a lot of money. You will be exposed to far fewer toxins than you would have been as a smoker. Your risk of getting cancer is less than 0.5%. of what it is as a smoker. I mean, there is no question that if you're a smoker, making the switch is to your benefit. Look, we don't want kids to vape, but the way we regulate it at the moment, Alan, is we make it as hard as possible for people to get vapes. So what happens then is the black market says, well, okay, we'll provide vapes because no one's going to go to the doctor to get a script. We know that. So we'll provide them. So the black market sells unregulated, untaxed, expensive products to adults and children. So kids find it easier to get vapes as under the current model than they would under a proper regulated model, which is what we should be doing, which is what's working overseas.
Yeah, well, speaking overseas, I'm pretty sure in the 1930s prohibition didn't work, so I can't see anything changing.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Prohibition never works. When you ban a drug, it doesn't go away. What happens is it goes underground. So people find ways, if they want a drug badly enough, they'll get the drug. And we have an established criminal network now that imports illicit tobacco and other drugs, and they will find ways of bringing these drugs in. And this is the second biggest illicit drug market in Australia, illegal vapes. The second biggest illicit. We've created this by our ridiculous legislation. And with that, we've got firebombing of vape shops and tobacco shops. We've got contract killings. We've got extortion, intimidation.
Apparently the bikie gangs are in on it, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. We've created all this. It was totally predictable, as you say. We know. Does every generation have to relearn that lesson? We've learned that already dozens of times. Yeah. And yet the Prime Minister, the Health Minister says, "Well, that's okay. We'll just ban this harder and harder, and we'll just restrict, we'll add more policing, more border control efforts, and we'll just stop it." But it doesn't work. Yeah. And we know from experience that you cannot constrain a black market that's got to this size. And the criminologists will tell you this. It's not just my opinion. Yeah. They will tell you this. Once it's got to this size, you cannot stop it.
Okay. Now, Colin, New Zealand's one of our territories in all. So they've got a completely different way of looking at vaping. Can you just explain the list? Because they've had some great results from the introduction of vaping, haven't they?
Well, exactly. New Zealand's done what we should have done years ago. So in 2020, what they did was they legalised vaping. They said, look, we don't want people to vape, but we recognise some adults can't quit smoking. They're going to die. We've got to do what we can to protect adults. So we've got to make vaping available for people who need it. But we also have to make sure it doesn't go to kids. So what they've done is introduced the sale of vapes from licensed retail outlets to adults. So they said adults can go and get these products fairly easily, like you go and get a cigarette. You just go in and say, look, I'm over 18, I want to use this to stop smoking, and you just buy the products. And what they've found is in the next 3 years, their smoking rate declined more than twice as fast as in Australia. It fell by 14% per year, whereas in Australia it's been 6% a year. So the smoking rate plummeted. It plummeted in Maori populations, the Pacifica populations. That would also help our indigenous populations that have a ridiculous smoking rate.
Yes.
It reduced in their low socioeconomic groups. So it benefited everyone. But not only that, Alan, they've got almost no significant black market. So they've got no criminal gangs, biker gangs importing these products. Why would you? If you can go to a dairy, as they call them, and buy these products, why would you go to get an unregulated product from the black market?
Makes sense to me.
So they've got no people being killed because of turf wars by these criminal gangs. Yeah. And yes, look, their vaping rate went up amongst young people before regulation was introduced. Since regulation has been introduced, it started to level out. So that's already improving vaping amongst young people. Because, if you're a licensed retailer who sells to adults and you sell to kids and you've got the risk of losing your license, you're going to think twice about taking that risk. And that's what we're seeing happening over there.
Yeah. Well, under this new legislation that's coming out, I think there's a problem with because they want to want the vapors to go to a chemist, right? So, and I don't think chemists are totally keen with their shops getting broken into and firebombed because they've got some vapes. Do you think this is my point of view, I reckon the chemists are going to say, you give us some money and then we'll think about doing it. That's only my point of view.
Yeah. Look, I think that there is a commercial issue here. Look, the Pharmacy Guild has been very clear. They've said, we are very opposed to this. These products are not registered as medicines. You're asking us to give a lot of counselling for every purchase. We're health professionals. We have to do things properly, and you're not paying us anything for it. They're concerned about, their legal liability. What if a patient has a bad reaction of some sort and they've got no legal backup from these being registered products? There's a whole range of issues. They're worried about having to pay more insurance. They're worried about biker gangs firebombing their pharmacies. They're not going to do it. I'm telling you now, they're not going to do it. They've said they're not going to.
Yeah.
And I don't think they will. And vapers aren't going to go to pharmacies to buy these products because what they're selling is products that they don't want. They're selling vapes in tobacco, menthol and mint flavour. There's a small range of products. There's a limited nicotine level that's going to be allowed to be available to people to use. Vapers aren't going to go there. They're going to go to the black market where they can get whatever they want.
It's
and that'll
so
just
obvious, but Colin, this is so obvious. It's in your face. But and these so-called leaders are thinking, I don't know what they're thinking. I really don't.
Look, they're just thinking, we've decided we don't like vaping. We're just going to ban it. Okay, the first time the ban didn't work, well, that was because we didn't ban it hard enough. Well, this time we're going to ban it really hard. Okay, well, that time it didn't work, but that was because of this little problem and that problem. So now we're going to really ban it hard. It's just not going to work. I don't understand why they just can't see that, or they're just not willing to admit that.
Yeah, they can't enforce the chemists to sell things, can they?
No, they can't make the chemists sell them. No, the chemists have said they're not going to. I mean, there will be some independent chemists who may decide to go ahead. But, we've got 1.7 million vapers in Australia. You're not going to be able to service them with just a handful of chemists.
It's a black market for sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
so, absolutely.
Now, I just want to make sure the listener knows you aren't funded by any tobacco organisation or vaping organisation, anything like that?
No, I've worked in this field for 40 years, Alan, as a clinician, a researcher. More recently, I've been advocating for tobacco harm reduction, vaping, because I can see how effective it is for public health. I've been a professor of public health at the University of New South Wales. I've never received funding from tobacco or e-cigarette companies. No, my concern is public health and preventing cancer, heart disease and lung disease. And that's what vaping will do if we'll allow people to make the transition from smoking if they can't otherwise quit. And like I said, we don't want kids to vape, but the best way to prevent that is to have vaping sold from licensed retail outlets, like they do in New Zealand and the UK. You lose your license if you sell these products, and and as well, people are buying regulated, legal products that we know are safe
with some quality assurance in the manufacturing process. I gather you're talking there.
Exactly.
Now, just quickly, Colin, what's the position in the United States? Because that's a massive market. I haven't heard much about vaping from the United States.
Yeah, look, vaping's a bit of a mess in the United States. In New Zealand and the UK, they've got their heads screwed on right. They've sort of recognised that vaping is going to save lives, and they've got to encourage it. In the US and in Australia, they've got this moral panic about kids vaping. Yes, there are kids vaping, so our first priority is to prevent kids from taking up vaping. And in doing that, in focusing on that, they're ignoring the benefits to adults. So in the US, they've only approved 27 out of millions of products for legal sale. So they've got also an enormous black market, and most products are sold on the black market because they've said, look, we're not going to allow products out there because we think kids are going to use them. But that hasn't stopped kids using them. It's made no difference at all. It's just they think they're doing the right thing by protecting kids, but they're letting adults die because they're not able to access products, and kids can buy these products easily from the black market.
So they'll try and clamp down on vaping, but they'll allow the sale of marijuana as a legal product. Tell me if that's not a
there's no logical science behind this. It all comes down. Just comes down to moral values. Puritanical values, ideological values. We don't think people should be using these products, so we're going to make these rules. They're often vested interests.
Yeah.
We've got an interest in our funding, and our legacy depends on banning products and banning tobacco and
who their owners are.
Yeah, exactly. It's often financial, and the government makes a lot of money out of cigarette taxes. I mean, we all know that. So I think that's a powerful factor here.
Yeah. Now, the last question is, I've no doubt you would have put a submission into this this recent inquiry. Did they take it seriously? Your thoughts?
No.
Did they come back to you about?
Yeah, look, I gave evidence at the Senate hearing. Like, I think what the Senate had decided, the Senate committee made a decision based on politics. I mean, I think they decided before the committee. This is what the Labor Party thought. This was the majority number of committee members. This is what they were going to decide. The Liberal Party came out and they've said recently, look, we believe the New Zealand model is the way to go. The Nationals have said that. I think the Greens have always been in favour of harm reduction. That's safer alternatives when there is a dangerous product. I'm not quite sure why they haven't gone all the way in supporting vaping. I think it's political more than anything.
Yeah.
But I think the Labor Party had decided this is our position, and we're sticking with this. And no matter what's said in these hearings, no matter what evidence comes up, this is the position we're going to be ending up with.
So they've just done it for a tick the box thing. Yeah, we've consulted.
Exactly.
And, we've gone out there and done it. Well,
exactly.
Well, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn, thank you very much for your time and information today. It's always enlightening, and I'm just staggered how stupid our politicians are these days, Colin.
Yeah, look, I used to think, good health policy was based on good science. You do the science, you work out what the science tells you in terms of the health outcomes, and you make policy accordingly. I realise now how naive I was. Science is public health policy is about politics and about vested interests and about finances and ideology. Everything but the science. We
saw that in the so-called COVID lockdowns. But anyhow, we won't go there.
Yeah, that's
follow
another
the
story.
science. Thank you, Colin. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Alan. Thank you.